I thought graduation day would be the one day he'd finally be proud of me. I stood at the top of the steps in my cap and gown, looking out at the crowd at my father. He didn't smile. He didn't even clap. When the ceremony ended and the family gathered for dinner, he stood up, raised his glass, and said, "You're not one of us anymore." Just like that. No explanation. No apology. Just cold dismissal in front of everyone. I felt the air drain from the room. My mother looked down. My brother smirked. And me? I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small black box, and placed it on the table in front of him. Inside that box was everything he thought he had control over. But not anymore. That night, I lost a father and found my voice. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the rule follower, the straight-A student who color-coded her binders and apologized even when it wasn't my fault. At every family gathering, I'd sit with my back straight, napkin folded neatly on my lap, smiling at people who barely noticed I existed. Meanwhile, my younger brother Logan would walk in 10 minutes late, crack a joke, and suddenly, he was everyone's favorite again. Especially Dad's. My father, Walter Callahan, was the kind of man who didn't raise his voice, he just made you feel small with a glance. He believed in strength, legacy, control. Everything in our family had a role, a label, a function. Logan was the heir. I was extra. Still, I tried. I enrolled in the best schools, aced every class, applied for scholarships we didn't even need just to prove I was capable. But it was never enough. When Logan scraped by with a C average, Dad took him golfing to celebrate progress. When I was named valedictorian in high school, he said, "That's good, but don't get cocky." The older I got, the more I realized love in our house came with conditions, and I was always failing to meet them. At first, I thought maybe it was just a communication gap. Maybe he didn't understand the kind of work I did, the way I thought. I was fascinated by artificial intelligence and human behavior. While Dad invested in real estate and hedge funds, I was sketching ideas for ethical machine learning applications. At dinner one night, I tried explaining a predictive empathy model I'd built for a school project. He cut me off halfway through and said, "So you're still playing with robots?" He didn't mean it as a joke. Mom sat beside him, silent as always, stirring her wine glass like it was more interesting than either of her children. She wasn't cruel, not the way Dad was, but she was absent in the most painful ways, like an empty frame on the wall. And then there was Grandma Eleanor, Dad's mother, the only one who really saw me. She remembered every project I told her about. She saved every handmade card I ever gave her. When Dad dismissed my career goals, she'd squeeze my hand under the table and say, "Don't listen to him. You're going to change the world." She was the only reason I kept coming to family dinners. She was the only reason I invited them to my graduation at all. If I had known what would happen that night, what Dad would say, I might have kept them off the guest list entirely. But I didn't. Part of me still believed that maybe, just maybe, he'd see me in that cap and gown and finally say the words I'd been waiting to hear since I was 5. But I was wrong. So wrong. I didn't rebel loudly. There were no slammed doors or tearful threats of running away. My rebellion was quiet, strategic. I stopped seeking permission. I stopped announcing my goals at the dinner table just to be ridiculed. Instead, I started building a life Dad knew nothing about. When it was time to apply to college, he handed me a brochure for the same business program he went through at Dartmouth. I smiled, nodded, and tossed it in the recycling bin the second he left the room. I'd already accepted a full ride to a top tech university on the West Coast. Computer science and behavioral finance, double major. Dad found out the day I left for orientation. "You won't last a semester," he told me, not even bothering to drive me to the airport. "I know," I replied quietly. "That's what makes it worth trying." Out there, miles away from the Callahan estate, the country clubs, the curated family portraits, I breathed for the first time. I waited tables in the evenings, worked in labs at night, and coded until sunrise. My dorm was small, the food was terrible, and my feet hurt most days. But I was happy. I stopped answering family group chats. Not that anyone noticed. Most messages were just Logan flexing his new car or posting golf selfies with Dad. One time, he posted a picture from Cancun during spring break. The caption read, "Callahan men work hard, play harder." I was folding laundry at a laundromat when I saw it, still wearing the same hoodie I'd slept in after pulling an all-nighter on a neural net simulation. I didn't envy Logan, I pitied him. He was Dad's trophy. A living proof of tradition. I was the crack in the glass they kept pretending wasn't there. The only person who ever checked in was Grandma Eleanor. She'd send short texts. "How are midterms, sweetheart? I saw an article about AI and thought of you. Are you eating?" She sent birthday cards with $50 bills and wrote "book fund" in the memo line. Even when I used them for coffee and cold medicine, she didn't care. She just wanted me to be okay. I never told her how bad things had gotten. How my landlord nearly evicted me sophomore year because Dad forgot to transfer the tuition support he'd promised. How I worked 2 jobs while nursing strep throat just to cover textbooks. How I'd once gone 2 days on peanut butter crackers. I didn't want to worry her, but she knew. One day, in junior year, I got a call from her. "You've always taken care of yourself, Ava. That's your strength. But sometimes strength is also letting people help you." I cried in the bathroom for 15 minutes after that call. The deeper I dove into school, the more I realized I wasn't just chasing knowledge, I was running from legacy. From being told who to be, how to act, what dreams were acceptable. Logan never questioned anything. He didn't have to. He was born into comfort. I was born into conditions. By senior year, I'd stopped asking for anything. No more favors. No more calls home. I'd built my own support system, professors, friends, my research advisor, and of course, Grandma Eleanor. That was the year I got nominated for the Chancellor's Innovation Award. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't need to. Let them keep pretending I was a footnote. I was about to become the headline. It was early spring when the call came. Grandma Eleanor had fallen in her kitchen. Nothing serious, just a bruised hip and a shaken spirit, but it rattled me more than I expected. I flew home that weekend. Not for my parents, just for her. Her condo smelled like lavender and old books, the same as always. She shuffled to the door with her walker, stubbornly refusing to let me do it for her. "You didn't need to come all this way," she said, even as she hugged me for a full minute. She looked smaller than I remembered, frailer, but her eyes, still sharp, still warm, still the only ones that had ever really looked at me. We spent Saturday going through her paperwork. "My eyes aren't what they used to be," she said with a sigh. "And your father's always too busy. Will you help me sort out my finances? Just organize things so it's easier if something happens." She said it like a joke, but the way her voice caught at the end it wasn't. I didn't hesitate. I made tea, cleared the dining table, and began sorting through folders. Most of it was simple. Utility bills, pension statements, old bank documents. But then I opened a folder labeled Callahan Trust Holdings, and the air shifted. I froze. 25. 0 transferred to L. Callahan. Educational Investment Fund. 70. 0 wired to W. Callahan. Strategic Real Estate Initiative. Recurring monthly withdrawals labeled Elder Advisory, Executive Account with my father's name attached. My heart sank. I flipped page after page, numbers that didn't add up, investments that didn't exist, signatures that looked rehearsed. "Grandma," I asked gently, "do you remember these transfers?" She leaned over, squinting. Walter said those were just temporary. Tax stuff. Said he'd explain later. When? She frowned. A few months ago. He had me sign some documents. I didn't read them closely, he said. I didn't need to. I bit the inside of my cheek. Did he ever talk about changing your will? She paused. He's been suggesting. Subtle at first. Then more direct. Said I should make things easier. And leave everything to Logan. That you'd be fine on your own. Her voice cracked, and I saw something flash across her face's shame. I took her hand. You don't have to justify anything. I'm not as foolish as they think, she said quietly. Then, with surprising firmness, she pulled a small digital recorder from her knitting bag. I bought this a while ago. Started recording our conversations. Just in case. She hit play. My father's voice filled the room. Slick and confident. Mom, this is just a formality. You don't need to read all that. Trust might's better for everyone. Then my mother's voice, soft and syrupy. Eleanor, let's not complicate things. Logan's the future of this family. Ava, she's always had her own path. I sat there in silence, fists clenched, the room spinning. They think I don't see how they treat you, Grandma whispered. But I do. And I'm not letting them take anything else. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. I felt seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of her guest room, heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Resolve. They wanted to erase me from the family. Fine. But they had no idea what I was about to become. The next morning, I drove straight to the city. Grandma had gone back to bed after breakfast, assuring me she'd be fine. But I couldn't sit still. Not after what I'd seen or heard. The digital recorder, the documents, the ghost withdrawals, none of it felt like coincidence anymore. It felt like a slow, calculated theft. From someone too kind to believe it could happen. I called a local elder law attorney I found online, Howard Dean. His reviews weren't flashy, but they were filled with words like thorough, honest, uncompromising. He picked up on the third ring. Bring everything, he said. I'll clear my afternoon. Howard was older, white hair, slightly hunched, with a faded law degree framed crooked on the wall behind him. But when he looked through the bank statements, his eyes sharpened. When I played the recording, his jaw clenched. This isn't sloppy accounting, he said, voice flat. This is elder financial exploitation. I swallowed hard. What can we do? He tapped his pen against the desk, thinking, first, your grandmother needs to revoke the power of attorney. Immediately. Then we protect the estate to new will, new fiduciary controls, and a formal complaint. But you need to understand, if we go down this path, it becomes war. I didn't hesitate. She's ready. And so am I. The next weekend, I returned to Grandma's with legal documents in hand. She signed each one with calm, decisive strokes. Revocation of power of attorney. Designation of me as her new financial guardian. New will airtight and irrevocable. When she finished, she looked up at me. If they try to come after me again, I want them to hit a wall of iron. They will, I promised. We put it all into a small black box. Copies of every notarized page, backup recordings, a digital drive with metadata logs, even the original signed trust deed for the Callahan estate, which Howard discovered, had never legally passed to my father. It had always been Grandma's to control. Walter had just assumed ownership, and everyone else had played along. But that assumption was about to become his biggest mistake. Howard suggested we keep everything confidential until the right moment. He was right, surprise would be our only weapon. Don't confront them now, he warned. Let them dig their own grave. When they think they're in control, that's when we strike. And they were confident. Arrogantly so. 2 weeks before graduation, My mother sent me a text. Looking forward to celebrating your big day. We've booked the private room at Belmore's. Belmore's, of course. Dad's favorite power lunch venue. Mahogany walls, overpriced wine, and a menu designed for show not taste. It was where he took clients he wanted to intimidate. I stared at the message. After years of neglect, manipulation, humiliation, they were suddenly hosting a party? I should have declined, but I didn't. Instead, I replied, I'll be there, thanks. Because now I had the power, and I knew exactly what to bring. At graduation, I walked across the stage, took my diploma, and shook the dean's hand. I looked out at the audience and saw them. Mom, stone-faced and poised. Dad, checking his watch. Logan, barely clapping. And Grandma beaming. She knew what came next. They didn't. That night, I put on my black dress, touched up my lipstick, and slipped the black box into my bag. One last check before I zipped it shut. Not out of fear, but to savor it, because after a lifetime of silence, I was finally ready to speak. The day of the dinner felt surreal. My name was still echoing from the graduation stage when Mom rushed up to me with her signature air kiss and an offhand, "Well done, dear." Dad barely looked up from his phone. Logan just gave me a lazy nod like I'd crossed a minor item off the family checklist. But Grandma, she hugged me with both arms and whispered, "Tonight is yours. Make it count." Belmore's was exactly as I remembered: stiff chairs, linen napkins folded like origami, a maitre d' who looked like he judged people by their shoes. The private dining room smelled like cedar, money, and something burning under the surface. I was the last to arrive, intentionally. My entrance needed timing. I wore a sleek black dress knot, flashy, not casual, confident. A silver chain with Grandma's locket around my neck. The box was in my bag, nestled between my phone and a small hardcover copy of The Art of War, an inside joke between me and myself. As I stepped into the room, everyone turned. Logan smirked. Mom gave a once-over and said, "That's dramatic." Dad raised a glass. "There she is, our little graduate." Their words felt like scripts, polished, meaningless, rehearsed. But I smiled politely and took my seat, placing my bag carefully at my feet. The dinner was filled with empty chatter. Logan talked about a startup idea he had, something about NFTs and energy drinks. Dad made a jab about the fragile state of modern ethics, clearly aimed at me. Mom laughed like it was charming. And I just listened, observed, marked the shifts in tone. When Grandma praised me too enthusiastically, noted how Dad's jaw tightened when the waiter congratulated me on graduating summa cum laude. They couldn't help themselves. For all their wealth and power, the one thing they couldn't control was the fact that I had gotten here on my own. After the main course, I excused myself to the restroom. There, I took a moment to breathe. One last look in the mirror. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I returned to the table just as the dessert menus arrived. The waiter asked if we wanted to do a toast first. Before I could respond, Dad stood up and tapped his glass with the back of his fork. And I knew this was it. "Before we wrap up," he said, "I'd like to say a few words." He didn't look at me. He looked at the room. Tonight, we celebrate not just an academic achievement, but the closing of a chapter. Eleanor and I have come to a decision on that reflects our values and the direction this family must go. Ava, we've decided you're no longer a part of this family. Silence. Mom nodded slowly beside him. Logan blinked, stunned but said nothing. It was loud in my head. And yet, everything felt calm. I stood up slowly, reached into my bag, pulled out the black box, and set it on the center of the table. I looked at him, directly this time. "Congratulations, Dad. You finally said what you've always wanted to say. He blinked. What is that? Proof, I said softly, of who you really are. Then I turned to Grandma and gently kissed her on the cheek. Thank you for seeing me, I whispered. To the rest of them, I offered nothing. Not an apology. Not a tear. Not a second glance. I placed my graduation cap on the table, right beside the box. A final punctuation mark. And then I walked out of Belmore's into the night, into the cold, into freedom. The second I stepped outside, the night hit me like a wall cold, damp, bracing. But it was better than the air in that room. That room was filled with rot disguised as polish. This was real. I didn't walk away quickly. I let the chill settle into my skin, let it ground me. I could hear the muffled voices behind the oak doors of Belmore's. Some confused, some angry, some whispering my name. Then I heard the unmistakable thud of heavy footsteps. Ava! My father's voice barked behind me. Ava, stop! I didn't, until I felt his hand clamp onto my shoulder. I turned slowly. He was holding the black box. His face was no longer composite, it was twisted, red with rage, pale with panic. What the hell is this? He hissed. Legal documents? A revocation of power of attorney? A new will? You can't do this. I held his gaze. I didn't. He blinked. What? I didn't do any of it, I said calmly. Grandma did. All I did was help her see what was already happening. His mouth opened, then closed again. His hand trembled as he pulled out a document and waved it at me. You're manipulating her. She's old. Confused. She recorded you, Dad. You and Mom. Every conversation. Every threat. Every just sign here moment. His face went ghost white. He knew exactly which recording I meant. She's not confused, I added. She's furious. Do you have any idea what you've done? He growled. This could destroy us. Do you understand that? I tilted my head. No, Dad. You destroyed you. I just made it visible. That's when Mom appeared. She was breathless, her heels clicking too quickly against the pavement. She looked from Dad to me, then at the box in his hands. Ava, she said in that rehearsed, trembling voice. Please, let's be reasonable. We're family. No, I said, and my voice didn't shake. You made it clear I wasn't. Logan stepped out behind her, silent and stunned. His usual smirk gone, his arms crossed like a shield. You think this is justice? Dad spat. Dragging our family's name through the mud? No, I said. Justice would be pressing criminal charges. But Grandma's not interested in revenge. She just wants protection. He was seething now. His voice dropped. You'll regret this. You think the world cares about your little power plays? You'll always be the outsider, Ava. A stubborn girl with no loyalty. I stepped forward until we were eye to eye. You're right, I said. I'm not loyal to this name. Not anymore. But I am loyal to the woman who raised me with dignity. And to the truth. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Not anger, not disdain. Fear. Because he knew this time, I wasn't bluffing. He looked down at the papers again. His fingers curled around the edge like he could crush them. Then, with no more words, he turned and stormed off, dragging Mom with him. She didn't look back. Only Logan stayed. He stared at me for a long moment. I didn't know, he finally muttered, about any of it. I didn't answer. I couldn't tell yet whether he was another pawn or something more. We stood there in silence, the wind picking up around us. Then I turned and walked away, me heels clicking with each step, steady and deliberate. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I had just been exiled in front of my entire family. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. I didn't get far. Maybe half a block down the street, still within view of Belmore's glowing sign, when I heard it. Ava, wait please. It wasn't Dad this time. I turned. It was Logan. He jogged to catch up, his dress shoes scuffing the pavement, breath fogging in the cold. He looked, not like the golden boy I'd grown up resenting, but like a scared kid, shirt half untucked, eyes wide, hands trembling. I didn't know, he said again, more desperate this time. I swear to God, Ava, I didn't know they were doing all that to Grandma. You didn't ask, I said quietly. You never wanted to see. He flinched, but didn't argue. Dad always said you were bitter, that you were trying to take what was his, what was ours. Funny, I said, because I never wanted the house, or the trust. I just wanted to exist. He looked down. I used to think you hated me, I added, but now I think you were just too comfortable to question the lie. I was, he admitted. I didn't want to believe. The only reason I had what I had was because someone else was being robbed. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and scrolled. I started looking through some messages. From Dad, from Mom. His voice wavered. Stuff they said about you, about Grandma, stuff I ignored. He handed me the phone. There it was, a string of texts. Don't tell Ava about the Florida property transfer. She'll get suspicious. Keep her distracted during finals. We need to finish paperwork with Eleanor. Logan, stay close to her. Make sure she doesn't start digging. I felt sick. Not because I was surprised, but because this had gone deeper than I imagined. They hadn't just excluded me, they'd orchestrated it, managed me like a threat. I handed the phone back. I can testify, Logan said quickly, if it helps. If it comes to that. It might. And Ava, he hesitated, I'm sorry. For everything. For believing them. For not seeing you. For thinking being part of Dad's world made me someone. I looked at him long and hard. For the first time, I didn't see the golden child. I saw someone lost in the shine of a family name he didn't understand was hollow. I saw someone trying late. Maybe, but trying. Start with Grandma, I said. She still thinks of you as her grandson. Even now. He nodded, quietly wiping at his eyes. Can I see her? Not tonight, I said. But maybe soon. He looked relieved, like that one line had opened a door he thought was locked forever. We stood there in silence for a while, both facing away from the restaurant, both breathing in the night air like it could wash away the years. Then I said something I hadn't planned. I'm not doing this for revenge. He looked at me. I'm doing this so she's safe, so no one ever makes her feel like a burden again. His jaw clenched. They called her that, he whispered. In one of Dad's emails. A financial burden. Like she hadn't built everything we have. She didn't just build it, I said. She held it together, while the rest of you were too busy measuring success in property and wine lists. He nodded. Then, quietly, you're the only one who deserves her name. That caught me off guard. But I didn't respond. I just turned, gave him a small nod, and walked away. The next day, Howard called me. I've reviewed the audio, the bank documents, and the trust paperwork, he said. We have more than enough to act. Meaning? Meaning we file tomorrow. Elder financial exploitation. Motion to freeze the estate and transfer full fiduciary control to you. My hands were cold, but my heart was burning. Do it. And Ava? Yes? You've done everything right so far, but once we file, they'll try to make you the villain. Are you ready for that? I thought about Dad's face when I left the restaurant, and Logan's face when he realized the truth. I thought about Grandma sitting in her armchair, flipping through family photo albums that were more memory than reality. I've never been more ready, I said. That night, I couldn't sleep. But for the first time, it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was clarity. They had spent a lifetime trying to shrink me into silence. And now, I was about to be the voice that shook their empire. The court hearing was quiet. Too quiet, compared to the storm that had come before it. Howard presented everything. The forged withdrawals, the revoked power of attorney, the recorded conversations, the emails. My parents' lawyer tried to play the confused elder defense, but the judge wasn't buying it. Not when Grandma Eleanor walked in, head high, voice clear, and testified herself. The ruling was swift. Power of attorney was permanently revoked. I was named legal financial guardian. All accounts linked to Walter and Diane Callahan were frozen pending forensic investigation. The estate? Protected under a new trust. Untouchable. My parents didn't say a word when the gavel came down. Dad looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. Mom dabbed her eyes, but there were no tears, only the end of a performance that had run out of audience. Logan sat in the back, watching everything. Quiet. Still. Present. Afterward, Grandma hugged me so tight, I thought I'd break. But I didn't. I'd never been stronger. In the weeks that followed, I moved her into a new apartmenta, sunny 2-bedroom in a quiet building 5 minutes from mine. No more old money furniture or ghost-heavy portraits. Just soft rugs, light curtains, and a bookshelf she finally let me alphabetize. We ordered Thai takeout and ate on the floor that first night. She laughed like she hadn't in years. I feel free, Ava, she said, voice cracking. You didn't just protect my finances. You gave me myself back. But what she didn't know was, she'd done the same for me. Her belief in me, her trust it, had rewired something deep inside. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming. With Howard's help, I started channeling my double major computer science and behavioral finance into something bigger. I spent nights at my tiny desk, laptop humming, coffee going cold. I was coding, sketching, building, testing algorithms. I wasn't interested in launching the next flashy app. I wanted to build a shield. A system that could flag suspicious financial activity in real time, especially for the elderly. Withdrawals that didn't fit spending patterns. Abrupt changes in access. Hidden power of attorney shifts. And send alerts to a trusted contact the moment something felt wrong. I called it Haven Trust. It was part fintech, part guardian angel. I pitched it to Uncle Graham, Mom's brother, one of the few relatives still speaking to me. He had contacts in fintech. He listened, asked questions, then said 6 words that changed my life. How much do you need to launch? Haven Trust wasn't an overnight success. It was late nights, failed demos, 1,000 versions of the same UI tweak. But it was mine. It was real. And it was helping people, seniors, caregivers, even estate lawyers. And somewhere along the way, Logan called again. He'd dropped out of his luxury marketing program, was working part-time at a legal aid clinic, taking night classes in elder law. I want to understand, he said. And maybe help. I gave him a data research contract. Nothing fancy. But he showed up, did the work, stayed late, listened more than he spoke. He was growing, like Mebut, differently. And for the first time in our lives, we weren't rivals. We were rebuilding. 6 months after the hearing, I threw a small party in my apartment, white walls, second-hand furniture, startup energy. Grandma brought cupcakes. Logan brought a folding chair because I still didn't own enough seating. My best friend Kiera came with champagne and a sign that said, "To hell with legacy, build your own." Before we ate, Grandma stood up and tapped her glass. "I'd like to make a toast," she said, voice proud. "To Ava, the girl they tried to erase. The woman who rewrote the story. You didn't just protect me, you built something that will protect thousands." And you did it without hate in your heart, just fire in your spine. I had to look away to keep from crying. Later that night, I stood on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker. The Callahan name no longer haunted me. It wasn't a burden or a weight. It was just history. What mattered now was what I'd built with my mind, my resolve, and the love of the few who saw me when no one else did. Dad said I wasn't one of them anymore. He was right. I wasn't one of them. I was something else entirely. I was free. And this time, the legacy? It would begin with me.